McArthur on AM 640.
Tegan and Sara Quinn are twin sisters that have been making music professionally for 13 years. Their career has seen them go from indie darlings to pop music stars. Their latest album, Heartthrob, debuted at number 3 on the Billboard album chart. Tegan and Sara will be the headline act for the closing ceremonies of the World Pride celebrations, performing a free show June 29th at Yonge and Dundas Square. And Tegan Quinn joins us here on the line on Talk Radio in Toronto, AM 640. Tegan, good afternoon.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm happy to have you here. And listen, I'm a big fan of this record, Heartthrob, and I want to talk about the music first, if we could, because your sound, your music, it's gone through quite an evolution, hasn't it? From something that was sort of, I think, very folksy to now somewhat pop-based. And I know pop music certainly is enjoying a resurgence. Was that a conscious choice on your behalf? I mean, how did you get from the coffee house to the dance floor?
Well, like you said, 13 years, but it was actually a lot more than that. I mean, we graduated high school in 1998 in Calgary, and, we were musicians, but I don't think we thought we were going to have a career necessarily. We just kind of were using it as a way to avoid going to university right out of high school. And within a couple of years, we had established a pretty decent following in Canada, and we signed to an agency, and Neil Young's record label signed us. So I think a lot of that folk kind of labeling, that moniker sort of came with the signing to Neil Young's record label, but we sort of always saw ourselves more as a rock band. And through the 2000s, that was sort of what was cool. That was like, the indie rock music scene was something that really spoke to us and we really understood. And but I think that we always sort of felt like we were writing pop songs and we were just sort of dressing them up as rock songs. And being in a band for so many years, we just felt kind of like we had to try something different and make sure that our band was still really inspired. And we have a really, loyal fan base, but we wanted to make sure we weren't just taking advantage of them and putting out a record that we knew they would buy. Instead, we wanted to challenge them and make something that was really different and sort of expand our repertoire. So, and as you said, pop music had sort of started to get really popular again. And for us, the real challenge began when we started writing. We thought to ourselves, how can we make pop music that has depth and it has meaning and it has, like a heart and soul to it. And I think Heartthrob was that. That was our project, was to accomplish those two things.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because here's what I really like about this album and I like about your music and why I think it connects, because it's got the infectious beat or groove that all pop music does.
Sure.
But it doesn't feel contrived. It doesn't feel manufactured. It does feel, heartfelt. And at times it's got a bit of an edge. And the music may be more processed than it has in the past for you guys. But it's not processed, if you know what I'm saying.
No, totally. And, ultimately you have to, and all great musicians and artists from, the last, 100 years will say the same thing. You've got to really believe in what you do. You can't, it doesn't matter what art form you're involved in. If you're putting out something that doesn't feel good or feel like you or doesn't feel inspiring, people are going to see right through it. And I think we have such an intense relationship and real relationship with our audience. People would have saw through it if we were just putting out a safe record. And I think Heartthrob was our answer to that. And I do think people saw that right away. They heard the vulnerability. I think it's our most honest record. Even though it's really popular, it's actually the record I think that was most honest that we've ever put out. So.
Well, I want to play a couple of tracks just briefly. Here's the opening track and the first single, Closer.
All I wanna get is a little bit closer. All I wanna know is, can you come a little closer?
I love this because it's so infectious, and it's talking about the thrills of discovering a new love. But I love the line, I won't treat you like you're typical, because isn't that what we all say when we enter into a new relationship?
All those false promises at the start.
Right. Yeah. And Closer really kind of sets the stage, doesn't it, for the entire album for Heartthrob, which kind of examines relationships.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's the lighter side, too. Sarah really challenged me not to write depressing songs because she was like, you're not sad or depressed, so write something different. And I think that Sarah and I play that role in each other's lives. We really push each other to get outside of our box. And Sarah really pushed me to try something new. And I wrote a bunch of songs that she didn't like, and then I wrote Closer, and she said, yeah, this is the direction we need to go in.
Here's another single from the album Heartthrob, I Was a Fool. So this is the next phase in a relationship. I stuck around probably when I shouldn't have, and I was a fool. And who hasn't been there, right? Thinking a relationship was going to be so good, so great, and realizing in the end that maybe you were kind of foolish?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like this. I feel like we're in therapy right now.
It's group therapy for us all. And I got to play just a part of this track here as well. I'm Not Your Hero. This is the song right here, Tegan, that really gets me on the album, particularly the lyric, I'm not your hero, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't brave. What exactly are you saying in that song?
You know, I mean, Sarah and I felt for a long time that we were sort of held up as, representatives for our community, be it, alternative music or being women or being feminist or being gay. And sometimes the fact is that when you represent a community or you represent a group of people, you can disappoint them. And we consistently feel like we've disappointed people. It's sort of our pedigree. We've grown up as we're caregivers and we're people pleasers. And I think that this was sort of our way of exploring this idea that as much as we maybe didn't always please everybody and we maybe didn't always represent everybody, we were trying, and that over the last 15 years we've established ourselves as role models or as spokespeople for certain things, but ultimately we are just people and we're always just striving to do our best.
Yeah, was there ever a time in your career when a record company said to you guys, listen, don't be so outspoken, you don't have to be a quote-unquote a hero, and I don't know, could you pretend to be hetero or maybe just asexual for the sake of a record sales? Was that ever a consideration?
No, I don't. I mean, we never felt that sort of pressure. I mean, I think that if we had signed to a major label, I think maybe we would have felt more pressure. But because we signed to Neil Young's record label, we were sort of in that indie stream, and we were encouraged to be very much ourselves. No one said, stand up and talk about your politics or sexuality. People were just like, just do what you want. Elliot Roberts, who's managed Neil for 30 plus years, he signed us and he just said, be yourselves. If you're gay, then say you're gay. Like, who cares? And that was pretty progressive for, 1999 when we signed our record deal. But over the years, I think people have mostly embraced it. We don't really see a lot of homophobia or sexism. I know it's there. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of times where, that inner voice is sort of saying this isn't fair or there's a double standard here. But ultimately, Sarah and I just pushed through. I mean, we're musicians first, and our goal was to reach people, and we've done that, and so we've tried to stay positive. And certainly in the last few years, going with the pop record, there's these subtle little things that people say about our clothing or our hair, or like, well, maybe if you wore a white T-shirt in the video with a V-neck, and you're just like, you know what? No. Absolutely not.
Well, I know a lot of people, particularly young people, struggle with coming out. And as we get set for World Pride celebrations here, I think you two, both you and Sarah, have got such a unique story, being twins, of course, and both being gay. Mm-hmm. Did that make it easier for you to come out?
I don't think so, actually. I think probably, I know for me, I struggled because when Sarah had come out, it was sort of like I didn't want to take any of her moment, and also Sarah, when she came out, she took the main blow of like telling family and friends. So any issues or sadness or strife around that, she kind of took most of that, which I thank her daily for that. But I think that more than anything, what it was that Sarah and I were always really different. We were always alternative, and we always were very social. So we always were, we got along with people. I don't think we struggled. We weren't bullied. We weren't popular, but we also weren't, unliked. But I think we always knew we were different, and before we could actually put that into, articulate why we knew we were different, there was just always something that was a little bit different about us. And I think that that's where we benefited from having each other, because Sarah was my mirror, and when she wanted to cut all her hair off and it made my mom cry, I was like, well, I want to cut my hair off too. And when I wanted to get only one ear pierced so I looked like my dad, my mom was like, no, you have to get them both pierced. And Sarah was like, I want only one pierced too. So we had each other, we supported one another through the years. And I think that it was much bigger than sexuality. It was just about the fact that we were going to grow up to be kind of weirdos, and we supported each other in that.
Just finally, closing World Pride here in Toronto. What does that mean to you as artists, as members of the gay community?
Well, the first Pride I ever went to actually was in Toronto in 1998, and I remember being completely and totally overwhelmed with how many people were there. And the thing that struck me most wasn't about how many people were gay, but how many people weren't gay, and they were out supporting anyway. And I think the big thing our community thrives with is allies. So Sarah and I's big focus in our career has been not necessarily always just preaching to our own community or, catering to the gay, LGBTQ audience, but trying to break into the mainstream. In Heartthrob, one of our goals was to reach more people. For us, every time they play us on pop radio in America, every time we get on a national TV show like Letterman or The Ellen Show, we're reaching millions of people that we wouldn't have reached if we had limited ourselves to the underground. And I think that the thing that's exciting for me about World Pride is that we've now come so far, and we get to stand up in front of our community and so many other people and celebrate with them this incredible, amazing decade of change in the world.
Well, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of you guys and of the album Heartthrob, available right now. Tegan, thanks so much for your time. We look forward to seeing you guys here. June 29th, Yonge Dundas Square. It's a free show, right? The opening, closing ceremonies?
Absolutely. It's free, and we hope everybody will come down, and we can't wait. We're so thrilled.
Tegan from Tegan and Sara. Tegan, thanks again. Appreciate it so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Bye.
It's McArthur. Talk radio. AM 640.